Well, here we are back at the famous Blue Collar Logic Towers.
Super famous.
We're up here in the 45th floor studios.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to do another podcast here. So what's going on with you this week?
Same old, same old. I'm doing a couple mixes, mixed a couple songs, and hanging out with you. Yep.
I just returned some work emails this morning about, I got one of those great emails where people say, hey, I got your name from a friend of mine. This is for my painting business. And so we have a couple of rooms, and they have to be all white. They're bedrooms. And then we have the living room and the dining room, and they're going to be gray, but they're going to need white ceilings and white trim. So roughly how much will that cost? No pictures, no sense of how big the rooms are, how many windows, what style windows, what types of doors. Is it in good shape? Is it in bad shape? What color is it currently painted? None of that information, you know. So you just have to do what you can to write back and say, hey, you know, it's a possible job. So you write back and say, you know, I can't give you a meaningful estimate, so but I'm happy to run by and have a look. So
I get the same thing with music.
This is how these things start.
I get the same thing with music. People will call me.
How much to mix my album?
That's right. Right. I don't know how many songs they are, how long they are, how many instruments they've used,
how messed up it is
what
now.
It needs. Right. Drum replacement. Does it need vocal tuning? Right. Any of the stuff. Right. But yeah, I got 5 songs, real easy, quick songs. Like, what does that mean to me? Can you do them for like $20 each? What?
Right.
No. Yeah.
Well, maybe if they're almost perfect, and all I have to do is like, you know. Right. Jiggle them a little bit, maybe, but there's just no possible way of knowing. That's why estimates are a drag, and working by the hour is much, much better. But even then, if you tell people, you know, hey, I get $25 an hour or whatever, which I do, then even that doesn't really tell them, because then I can't tell them. And then you go, well, how many hours do you think it'll take? Again, we're right back to the start. I don't know.
Right. In between like 10 and 35 hours, right?
Anywhere between about, say we're talking 4 rooms, anywhere between about 35 hours and 17 weeks, depending on how you are. There giant gaping holes in things. Do I have to put new drywall up? Who knows? So anyway, but I'm just about done with my winter break, and it's time to.
I guess you're seasonal, right? I guess being a painter in California.
It is seasonal.
Well, probably anywhere.
And it's been much more seasonal because, as some of you know, I've been out touring the country a little bit and doing some camping. That's why I have this infernal suntan that's messing with our cameras constantly. Some of you see some of our videos. That what is wrong with Dave's face? Is he having some sort of a heart attack or something?
He's red. He's
no. He just got back from the desert 5 hours ago, and he's been out in blazing heat. I don't know. I'm having issues relating to society. I find I need to run out to the desert, unplug for a while. It's like I got to do that and bring lots of zinc oxide with me next time.
Well, I think it's overwhelming in the digital age, because especially how we're putting ourselves out there, but in today's world, it's like everybody's putting themselves out there. You know, there was a time where Walter Cronkite was the guy on the news, and he walked around and people go, oh, man, you know, he said something embarrassing, and everybody knows it because he was being videoed. Now, you know, your 12-year-old kids at home doing something embarrassing, and then everybody sees it, and we're living that age. Right. Yeah, it's a different world.
How many friends would you say that you have lost, to the degree? I mean, I don't think anybody would say who loved you a year ago. I don't think anybody would say, I no longer like Jason Seiler. But there are people now that are sort of afraid to hang out with you, probably, because, and it's not that they think you'll do anything bad to them, it's that they don't want to be seen associating with you, because if anyone else is thinking that, it'll hurt their popularity. I mean, it'll hurt the first friend. Friend A is afraid to hang out or have you at a party because friend B will then witness friend A hanging out with a known non-liberal, and who knows how that will impact their thing. They're not afraid of us. They're afraid of each other. That's what the truth is. They're afraid of each other attacking them. So if they step out of line.
Well, I think one thing different between you and I is my personal Facebook page. I don't post our videos.
There's nothing on there.
I use it for work, right? I use it for music because of that reason, right? Because when I get a job, sometimes I go there and the first thing I hear from these people is, how terrible, conservatives are, how terrible Trump is, or whatever, because these are big liberal music people here in LA.
Right.
And they're like, so I was doing, I was working at a studio with Ryan Adams. I don't know if you know who that is.
Sure.
And me and another guy were in one room setting some stuff up. And we were talking about Obamacare at the time. And I said, oh, did you hear about, some people, I don't know what it was, this, that, and the other. Ryan Adams comes around the corner and says, hey, Jason, he says, I did fundraisers for Obamacare and Obama, okay? That's not how it works. And I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I just something I heard on the internet, and I just like shut up, and I wasn't going to, I got a job to do. I'm not.
Right.
And it was like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to be bringing up, even to the guy I know that I was talking to,
Right.
was not necessarily into what I'm saying, but we can have a conversation and disagree, but not this.
Right, and the intimation, I mean, Ryan Adams, I'm sure he's a nice guy. He's a great talent. But the intimation from him to you was that you're working for me, you will think as I tell you to think.
That's right.
And that's basically what it is.
Right, that's what it is. And so I don't try to mix the two worlds, if you will.
Yeah, you're
right?
not allowed to.
That's right.
You know,
I will be penalized, and I probably have lost jobs because
Right.
I have some music friends that are on my page, and they say, "Oh, Jason commented on this guy's thing or on this Blue Collar Logic page." So,
And this goes back way, way before Trump. Trump did not cause this divisiveness, and anybody who says that he did is just flat out lying and knows they're lying. They're lying intentionally. Trump is a product of the division. That we're so divided that a lot of people, oh, we really hate Donald Trump. Okay, I'll like him then. Or I really like him. Okay, I'll hate him then. You know, I mean, the degree to which we are already divided, it opened the door for a guy like Donald Trump, because never before, he's so controversial that never before would people be staying on board with him through these great controversies, but they will now because, oh, yeah, man, that really pissed off my opponent. So now I really like Trump all the more. And then the Trump never backs down. It's like, he's speaking for all of us who have been uninvited to things since we became conservatives. And, like, I became a conservative. Now, Jason is not really a conservative. He's more a libertarian. But he grew up in a conservative home.
that's right.
I grew up in a Republican home that I would say was liberal Republicans. My parents were pretty, very liberal. And, if there was a black person to invite to dinner, they were right on it. Back in the years, back in the years when everybody it's still going on the left, but
That's right.
we were all kind of going out of our way to make sure that we had, that we opened our doors to the disenfranchised, and my parents were very forward looking in that way. Always were. I think a lot of Republicans were. I mean, really, Republicans are the party of integration.
As far as partisan politics goes, you're right that it didn't come with Trump.
It didn't at
right?
all.
And
even the level of anger was pretty high.
That's
already.
Right. That's right. And I think ultimately what we're seeing is, like, let's say with the North Korea situation, you got people who 4 years ago were saying, oh, we should meet with dictators to try to figure out a way to
Right.
work together and all that stuff. Now those same people are saying, oh, look, Trump is making somehow Kim Jong-un, normalizing him, and so on. They've totally switched their positions, right? Or the geopolitical, Mitt Romney said the geopolitical foe of our time is Russia.
And he was mocked.
And then
He was mocked.
that's right. What did Obama said something like,
yeah,
the 80s
the
called?
80s called, they want their foreign policy back.
Wow, right?
Oh,
and then
what a bird, what a schoolyard chop that was.
Right, and 4 years later,
it's as if the Russians are everywhere, and it's just, I mean,
That's true.
I don't understand. This must be why chiropractors are so popular in left-wing areas. It's all the whiplash that Democrats have from constantly changing their story. I mean, I could not possibly keep track of it. I mean, our story is fairly consistent. I mean, I've been pretty consistent all along what my views are. And when I change a view, that's kind of an event for me. I change a view and I kind of have to go online and talk about it and tell people, look, I changed my view on this and here's why. So because people think that they know where I stand on things. I think people know where you stand on things. They don't have to check back every 15 minutes to see where I now stand on something, but it's really that way with the American left now. I remember when gay marriage really came in, I had this actual conversation. It wasn't a conversation that I had. I witnessed this. I was living in Thousand Oaks at the time, and I was sitting in a Starbucks, and I was doing some work. I was doing some writing, and this couple is nearby, right? And she is telling him in a long screed about how marriage is a noxious holdover of male patriarchy and chattel slavery, right? She's telling him about marriages that way. And then about 20 minutes later, they had moved over onto the gay marriage thing. And she was thinking, the thought that anyone would deny gay people the dignity of marriage is just absolutely homophobic in the extreme. And the guy's over there, okay. I mean, he noticed it.
Right.
He goes, she had whipsawed around from marriage being the worst thing possible for women,
slavery
and the only thing that could grant dignity to gays. And I mean, that is just and that this woman did not notice herself saying that, that encapsulated the entire view of the left. We'd been hearing for many years, marriage? What are you talking about? We don't need marriage. It's not a crisis that people are not married anymore. Women don't need men. I mean, they've done every policy. They've created every policy they could to enable women to not be married.
Yeah.
Been married to the state.
No, this is another thing that Trump did. No, seriously, every problem in the world right now, the Democrats or the left want to say Trump somehow has brought to the world, and everything was running so smoothly for the last 8 years under Obama, right? And I think that's why they try to, and Hillary too. She just come out the other day talking about women don't vote; they vote the way their husbands want them to vote, and it was racism again. She's still pushing that, and I really think they're doing.
She was saying that women vote that way on the right.
Yeah,
yeah.
But I think in her mind and in a lot of people on the left, they really do go like, well, everything was going so great, so I can't possibly figure out why, what happened. And since there's nothing that comes to their mind, they go, it must be racism, it must be sexism, it must be something wrong. But, I heard that comic Bill Burr say, stop it with the racism stuff. Where were those guys at 4 years ago and 8 years ago when they could have voted against a black guy? Are you telling me that the racists come out this year to stop the white woman? I mean, the left can't come to grips with the fact that America in general, or more so than they were when Obama started, weren't happy with what the left are doing.
No, and well, but again, the people on the left, and I make a distinction between liberals and progressives and leftists. There is a distinction to be made in here, and I just give hippies a pass in general because they're giving me free hugs, and I'm very appreciative of it. And we usually jam some tunes.
That's right.
I see them, we jam some tunes, and I have to reteach them how to tune their guitar. But it's always a good thing, But it's always. But I've never felt like conservatives or anything really to hippies more than a love challenge. I mean, it's like, some people who are unlovable according to everything we've been told. I gotta amp up my love. But and liberals, I think are just, they're lightly political, if political at all. And like my girlfriend that has now has flown the coop again. She does that. She's been doing this basically every year since the beginning, and she'll be gone for 2 or 3 months. And I don't think of it as a big crisis. I figure, okay, she's just taking a break, whatever. But this time, like the 2-month mark came up, and I thought I better, start texting her and see what's going on. Nothing, right? So now and we had, and the reason that we had split up, this is, she's a wonderful human being. For anybody who's hearing this, who knows her, she is really a wonderful human being. But she would always bring up politics when we were together because she knows that I'm kind of interested in it, and it makes for a lively discussion. And so I kind of got to a place where I said, look, on the nights when we're going to have a romantic evening where we're going to have dinner together, go see a movie, maybe, you know, snuggle up a little bit and whatever else happens, let's just say no politics on a night like that. She goes, what? We can't, but I like talking politics. And I said, I do too. But on the nights when I don't want to like throw you out of here in anger or say, sorry, the mood has passed. On nights that I don't want that to happen, let's just not talk about politics. And then, well, I'm very upset. And I go, look, it's just the limitation of our relationship. Our relationship has limitations. Yes. Yeah, I mean, we don't agree on basically how the world should be organized. We agree on, that Graham Parsons song is great. Let's sing it together. We agree there. But we don't agree on literally how society should be organized. That's a fairly large disagreement to have with the person who's in your life. So a friend told me that she's been cited with some social justice dude around town.
Man, she went one extreme to the other.
That's what I'm telling myself now. Okay, maybe this is the pendulum swinging. Maybe this is this Dave's conservative politics are more than I could take. I'll just swing over here and I'll just follow this scruffy bearded social justice dude around town for a while. And
when she goes to her first Antifa meeting, she'll realize, ooh, I went too far left.
Yeah, well, maybe Dave's not so crazy after all. But I mean, it's breaking up relationships, and not just I'm not whining about mine. I realize that I'm not
my wife's
the easiest boyfriend to have.
My wife's not very political, and we probably agree on most things.
Right.
But occasionally, I'll say something, and she'll just be like, "All right now." But I like it, so I talk a lot, and she's not really into it. So
yeah, and she's like lightly political, like I was saying about Vicky. Vicky was lightly political, until she got involved with me, and Donald Trump comes in, and I think she feels like she lives in West Hollywood.
I feel like
she feels like she needs to be more politicized in order to have something to say if anybody should ask her about Trump, so she can leap up and say the right anti-Trump.
Well, I feel like that has brought a lot of people that are left-leaning, let's say, into the fray. Right before they were kind of going like, you know what? They're all the same. George Bush, Obama, they're kind of all the same, blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of people saying that, and then Trump came in and they said, oh my gosh. And I think the hysteria that the media's built and the different things, and let's be honest, Trump says some things and has done some things that aren't normal, if you will, but what I think a lot of people don't focus on, is that people were tired of the same old thing, the same old politician. There wasn't much difference between George Bush and Obama in some areas.
No, not that much.
It wasn't as much, and
well, you can certainly say between George Bush and Kennedy, certainly. Right.
Well, I feel
but even Obama,
I feel like 8 years of Bush gave us Obama, let's say, but I feel like it was the 8 years of Bush. Or maybe the 8 years of Clinton, the 8 years of Bush, the 8 years of Obama that gave us Trump.
Well, I don't agree that Obama was as much of a reaction against Bush as he was just the first really viable black guy who could be president who speaks like a white guy.
That's true.
I mean, they've just really always wanted to have I talk about a thing called the aging liberal bucket list. And I should do a video on this one of these days.
That would be a good video.
But I mean, there's this things that they've got. We got a lot of people who are 10, 15, 20 years older than I am. I'm 62. And who are aging out. And they're getting to the place where they can hardly knit their own pussy hat, and they need help because my fingers won't do the knitting anymore, and I want to get down to, could you help me carry this sign?
And I forgot what one looked like.
Apparently they have little ears on the top, but they're seeing their lives as activists waning away. And they don't really have anything much to show for it. Their generation became the most materialistic generation in the history of the universe. And I've checked other planets. And so, everybody didn't go back to the garden and live off the land. Most people ended up running after the dollar, and they feel like they've really been beaten by capitalism. And they don't really have anything much to be proud of. They really, really wanted to get the first black president. And now that it's so pretty much known that Republicans would be overjoyed to elect a black president that shares our values, they felt that, this is not a given that it'll always be a Democrat. We got to do this now. And this Obama guy comes along, and he'd been in training. He'd been being raised by white liberals to speak fluent white liberal, and he'd gone from one thing to the next, being groomed until he came out as when he was a state senator in Illinois. He came out as the keynote speaker at the Democratic convention. Everybody that was watching that knew they're running this guy for president.
Yeah.
And they ran him just as quickly as they could. And so there wasn't any way they were, and nothing he does now, I mean, nothing even as ridiculous as him accepting the Nobel Peace Prize before he did anything at all that could have affected world peace.
Right.
And he accepted that award.
Right. It would have really showed
How embarrassing.
A real man if he'd have said, "No, I'm not accepting that award.
Yeah.
Bring it to me in 4 or 8 years if you think
look at it again.
I've done this. If I've done something.
Give it to the next guy
But
down on
that's
the
how
list.
hard they were hoping, and that this was the moment. This was the thing.
Right. They just assumed that he was going to be, the next guy that you see on memes. Oh, look at that amazing thing that guy said. Oh, that was Nelson Mandela. It must be true.
Right.
That was the Dalai Lama. They're just assuming that he is this wondrous, magical creature because they need him to be so that they can say that they did that before they all went off.
Didn't they call him Barack the Magic Negro?
Well, they didn't call him
who said that?
But it was a left-wing columnist who did. I did a video on that, and I'm unfortunately screwed up one of the facts, and so we pulled it because we have scruples here at Blue Collar Logic. Damn it, it was a minor screw up, but I dumped it anyway.
Yeah. We'll bring it back out.
You will bring it back out, but the it's the same way that Morgan Freeman has to play God.
All the time,
and
right.
if you see a black person in a video now, they have to be, they are either going to die nobly protecting the white protagonist, or who's the real good guy, or they're going to be that sort of character that at a given point the white protagonist goes to receive wisdom and enlightenment. Like I think it's happening in that new Oprah Winfrey is in the new Disney movie. It won't come to mind, but I've seen the trailer for it, and it's Oprah Winfrey and all kinds of crazy makeup, acting like a fairy godmother. So she's Oprah is.
She's the real life version.
She's the real life version. She's
Right.
expected to come out and save everybody now, because now the magical Negro has to be also a female.
Yeah.
Because they're doing that. But they so wanted that, and they got that, and then they wanted, okay, what's next in line? Woman.
Right.
And then after that would be black woman, or Hispanic woman,
Or gay.
It would be nice if you could get a twofer with Hispanic, so you didn't have to do Hispanic twice.
A Hispanic female lesbian.
If you could get that all under the
And then we
Hispanic thing,
could just get the bucket list over with.
you could just. Oh, now I can die. I'm dying peacefully now.
That's right. And then maybe identity politics would go away. No,
No.
it won't.
It won't.
It will
They're-
not go
well, they're
away.
so busy trying to create new categories of human beings now.
Right. That's true.
Oh, well, geez, we don't want to limit people to either male or female because we've just about worn out both of those things. So
Yeah.
I wonder if at a given point, women who become transgendered males, are they going to get to be males, and now they're going to be sick of being crapped on by feminists, and they're going to now, will they go Republican? Will they be attacked, or will they get grace because they used to be women?
Yeah, I wonder.
So, and maybe that's the greatest extension, since really all feminism is anyway, is imitation manhood.
Right.
That's really all it is.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I wonder if like two best friends, women, one decides to become a man, And then
Right.
he comes out, everything's great, and she's like, "Wow, boy, you look so good." You're like, "Man," she's like, he's like, "Shut up and get in the back seat, woman." Like, I wonder, like, shut up.
I'm sorry, let me take over this. And he starts righteously mansplaining something.
Everything. I mean, that's funny.
Yeah, it's gonna get a little twisted. It's gonna get a little twisted.
Well, you know, there's that wrestler in Texas, the high school student that's, I guess, a transgendered male, but he's still wrestling with the females.
Yeah, I'm already confused.
Right, exactly. Right, and taking the testosterone,
So he started as a female.
That's correct.
And is now a male.
It's taking all the testosterone and everything to get the bulk and get the facial hair. Right. But he has to fight in the girls' division because that's the rules, I guess.
He's just wiping everybody else because he's full of testosterone.
That's right. And he's winning the state. She's winning. He's winning the state girls championship.
Yeah. Okay.
He's
crazy.
winning.
And there was that MMA fighter that I forget the person's name. It's a guy who identifies as a female, and so he's going and he went in there and did some MMA fights where he fought regular women. Now, of course, these are strong women.
Sure.
But he was a strong guy. And Joe Rogan described it as just pummeling. He says it's just hard to watch. You know, he's just flattening these women, and they're women. They're expecting to go in there and fight women. They're not expecting to go in there and fight a guy who's got all the. But we've talked about this before. So, but yeah, the bucket list thing is pretty desperate. I think that they got stuck by the fact that they didn't really like Hillary.
Right. No one really liked Hillary.
So the ground game wasn't there. They weren't out there enthusiastic about her.
Do you think they'll be enthusiastic when Nikki Haley runs for president?
Of course not.
They're gonna hate her guts, boy. They're just gonna hate her. They're gonna try to destroy her, and it's gonna be like, wait a second, I thought you guys wanted a female of color to be president.
They don't want any of that stuff.
No, they don't. That's true.
Yeah, they don't want any of that stuff. I mean, that was one of the first times that I began to really question my own liberal thing. Because, again, I was a liberal. I was never a left-winger.
You weren't progressive.
I don't think we even had that category until about 10 years ago. There was a political movement called progressives for the political wonks that read into that stuff or listen to Mark Levin, people like that. There's always been progressives. But I didn't have friends who were calling themselves progressives. Right. People were calling themselves liberal or left wing, sure. But we weren't really categorizing ourselves that much until 10 or 15 years ago.
You were a Democrat.
I was a Democrat.
You were basically a Democrat. Right?
I was a Democrat, and I would just vote straight party Democrat, really. And then when I saw what happened with the Anita Hill thing with Clarence Thomas. You know, and I don't want to say that Anita Hill was necessarily lying, but it's very suspicious if she was so traumatized by him having mentioned a porno movie or made a joke about a pubic hair on a Coke can. If she was felt so threatened by that, why she would then continue to work with him and seek employment with him when he moved. And why nothing had happened in a 10-year interim, but now we want to judge a man's character entirely on some trumped-up thing, and maybe it's a real thing. Maybe he had a moment of assholery.
Maybe he made an off-color joke. I mean, that happens.
I have had a few moments in my life where I have made a joke that really didn't land right.
Sure.
And I was thinking, boy, if somebody really didn't want to get that right, that one solidly landed wrong. I meant that to be funny, didn't come out funny.
That's right.
You know, I meant that to be clever, didn't come out clever.
Right. Or you thought the relationship you two had from previous interaction was like, oh, I could probably say this, and they wouldn't be grossed out or they wouldn't be offended because she said this to me the other day or something, right?
Yeah, and she's a liberated woman anyway, right? And it's a male environment, treat her like one of the guys. Maybe he was doing that, but my point is that that was not the leading edge of them caring about sexual harassment. That was them trying to get rid of a black Republican.
That's right.
That was what that was, and they were using that as their go-to, which brings up all kinds of other thoughts of how racist that is.
Right.
That they wouldn't be going after him over his views, but they'd be going after him at some thing, like it comes back to, it brings to mind the thought of the sexual, the sexual animalistic black male, mandingo. It's like, really? It's just, this is a hearing for the Supreme Court.
Right.
And I started pulling away thinking, oh, I don't know. And then I noticed after that, the whole, any time a black conservative would come up, oh, he's just a house Negro. For instance, like the idea that it's a shocking idea to Democrats that the Republicans would want just as many black people as possible. I mean, Dennis Prager had. Did we talk about this in our last thing about the Candace Owen thing? I finally watched that.
I don't think we did.
And it was I think she was taken off on a thing that Jason had done in one of his videos, frankly. But it was about.
Oh man, she's stealing my stuff.
We don't care what you think, Hollywood. Grab your. Jason's was called take your Oscar and shut up.
Yeah,
I think. But it was, her thing was the same topic. It was really well delivered. And Candace Owens is a rising star in the conservative blogosphere.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's very smart, she's very beautiful, and everybody just loves her. Now, if you were a liberal looking onto this, you could, and you had believed that racism was really a major part of Republican life, or at least conservative life, you could say, okay, well, you could make the thought that, okay, well, it's good for Dennis Prager and Prager University to find a black woman who's beautifully presented and happens to agree with them and put her up as if she's really special, and they have to look around and so you could make the idea that is tokenism, and it is tokenism to an extent, but she's gotten millions and millions of hits from people for whom watching her can give them no benefit. It might benefit Dennis Prager if he's trying to make the point that he's not racist. So a little tokenism would be valid if somebody is good at what she does. Maybe if there's 10 women that are just as good with the points to grab the black one, there would be a certain advantage. So there is that type of tokenism. But that tokenism would only be, if in fact most of Dennis' audience was racist, there wouldn't be any views on the video.
That's an interesting point.
There wouldn't be millions of views on the video.
Like if she's
nobody made me watch it.
Right. If she's being used by the right to say, hey, look, we're not racist, then they would just put her up there, and then they wouldn't listen to her.
Right.
They would just walk away and say, like, well, I'm not gonna listen to some black lady tell me anything if they're racist. Exactly. But if they're getting millions of views, then that actually shows us that it's really not about race.
That the rank and file out there who's watching the videos likes her just as well as they like any white presenter.
That's right.
And the numbers will show you that that's true.
Or like Dave Rubin or anybody, a gay guy, it doesn't matter. It comes down to the message.
It does, and it's so many people of color, and Dave Rubin, he's clearly gay. I always forget he is, because he just talks like a guy who is just in name only not yet a conservative. Right. You know what I mean?
He does.
He's just so close to it.
It's like he's afraid to step over that line. Right. He always I got a good friend that he basically changed over to being from a progressive to being a classic liberal. Right? And I feel like that's always the first step to going like, well, maybe I'm really a conservative, or maybe I'm really, because ultimately I think a classic liberal or just a true liberal and a conservative, they disagree on a few things.
About the same thing, really.
But not many, right? They both want liberty and equality, but equality of opportunity and liberty, freedom to live your life how you want. It's, they might disagree on abortion, and they might disagree on minimum wage or a couple little things, but, and those are big things. Those are not necessarily little things. But, yeah, Dave Rubin thought he was a progressive, and my friend thought he was a progressive, and then he's seeing what's happening, the identity politics and so on, and they go like, wait a second. I don't think a black person has to agree with this because he's black. I don't think that a gay person has to agree with... Log cabin Republicans are okay. They think the economy should be run this way, or they think... And he goes, wow. And then they start getting the attacks, right? And then they go like, whoa, I didn't realize my side was doing that.
I know. and a lot of really good thinkers, people like Jonathan Haidt, who a lot of you know from his book *The Righteous Mind*, where he really took an open-minded look at how people think and what types of brains lean toward conservatism and what kind of brains lead toward liberalism. And he was expecting not to be surprised by any of the data, but as he got into it more and more, he realized, you know what, I've never really listened to conservatives before. He'd been in academia his whole life, and he's not the kind of closed-minded guy that is really problematic in the universities. But as he started dealing with more conservatives, as he was writing this book, he realized, oh, I completely understand why they think that way. There's nothing weird about the way they think. That's just a way of looking at this thing that appeals to their type of thinking. And they're not bad people. And then there was that guy, I forget his name, but
from the NPR.
Yeah, he had been CEO of NPR, and in order to do a book, he did a thing that was like a takeoff on the old book Black Like Me, where the guy painted his face black. Is that what it was?
I don't remember
and then he
that.
went and lived among white people to see what kind of to learn about prejudice. And this was way back in the early '60s. A book called Black Like Me. So this was kind of like this. So he went to live sort of among Republicans and sort of pass as a Republican. And
went to church,
and
went
he did
to
all those
NASCAR
things.
races, all that stuff.
And it was
right?
he was almost being like a zoologist going to live among the monkeys for a while,
gorillas,
and he found out that these are really good people.
That's right.
And I understand their views and why their views pertain to the kinds of lives they want to live.
But if you listen to the media, and to go back to the tall, dark-haired woman that's not talking to you these days,
Exactly.
She's lightly political. She's just not coming to the battlefield, if you will, and she's going, "Oh my gosh, look what Trump and the right are. They're these monsters." She's been fed this thing, and she believes it wholeheartely, right? Or a lot of these people do. I don't know about her in particular, but a lot of people come and they say, like, "I just now started paying attention," and everything that CNN or NBC or whoever says, "Oh, this was racist. This is that," they go, "Oh my God, I never realized it was so bad," and blah blah blah. When in reality, it's nothing like that at all, right? And every liberal who really experiences it moves to Texas, moves somewhere amongst. They go like, "Oh man, I never had a better friend."
Oh yeah,
than a conservative.
and the tall, dark-haired woman to whom we're referring, I don't think that she split up with me really over that. I think it was more just over lack of romanticism or something like that. But that was one of the factors. That was one of the presenting factors. And that wouldn't have been, I mean, we'd been in each other's company for 3 or 4 years, and it hadn't been a problem to that point. So she knows that I'm not a bad person. I'm not the kind of guy that goes out, like most Republicans do, and push old ladies down the stairs in wheelchairs, and kick puppies. And
I think to get your Republican card, I think there's like a checklist.
Yeah,
like
you got to do all these things,
Yeah,
it took a while to get them all done.
Kicking puppies. This is I think that's step one. You do that.
I was, and I'll be the first to admit it, I was indoctrinated, and I was also, I was intellectually lazy about politics. Politics still makes my eyes glaze over some of the time.
How many times do you get in an argument or a discussion with somebody, a liberal or a lefty, and they throw up 3 arguments that you've heard 1,000 times, and then you go like, "Yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying, but what about this? What about that?"
Right.
And they go, "No, these 3 things again." And you go, no, but yeah, I hear what you're saying there, but I think of those things this way. No, that's these 3 things again. And until they call you racist or something, because they don't understand what they're talking about.
Right.
They've been told this, that, and the other. Rush Limbaugh is a racist, let's say.
Right.
So they yell it 1,000 times. They've never listened to Rush Limbaugh a day in their life. They've listened to 5 selectively edited cuts, and then they go, "Yep, just like Rachel Maddow says, just like Keith Olbermann said."
But if you were to say, you do know that his producer for the last 30 years, his right-hand man, the guy his closest trusted work partner, is a black gentleman.
What?
So how do you? So would he trust his show? That's his producer.
Yeah.
Snerdley. Mr. Snerdley. I didn't know that till somebody else told me, and I looked him up. But I've never heard Rush say it. I don't listen to him a lot, but I've never heard him say, well, let's go to my well-known black producer. It's not like he's using it as a tokenism thing, because I don't think... I've never told a liberal that who knew it.
Right.
And I said, so how do you explain that he's racist if his closest and most trusted fellow worker, what am I saying? I'm just producer. Colleague, there we go, is black.
Right.
And how do you...
Well, they can't explain it, just like they can't explain...
I mean, it's not like the guy putting a roof on his house is black.
Right.
It's a guy in charge of his intellectual life, sharing his intellectual life and
his
sharing
3-hour live show.
Exactly.
I mean, he could totally screw up his show.
Absolutely. Or if he wasn't smart enough, or if he wasn't trusted enough, Rush could never do a thing without completely trusting this guy in every way.
Right.
And apparently they have this ongoing long-term relationship. I remember people used to say that about Howard Stern. He's so racist. Well, what about Robin, his partner on the show?
Right.
I mean, she doesn't seem to think he's racist.
That's right.
And she's a woman, too, so don't tell me about the sexist thing until we get through the racist thing. It's really, largely, liberalism goes hand in hand with just accepting what the cool kids say. Mm-hmm. And it really what I thought of Republicans, and as I moved closer, as I started meeting some Republicans, there were people that I was working for, and I would notice I'd be working in their house, and I would notice that they had a book by Rush, or they had the Sarah Palin's book or something like that, and I would realize, wow, okay, yeah, these are the nicest people I've ever met, and the way that they treat the brown people who are working on their yard is like family. Mm-hmm. So these are really nice people. And so and this has been going on for a long time, long before Sarah Palin came on the scene. I've been realizing that I'm not noticing any difference between the conservative people whom I work for and the liberal people who I work for, except maybe I would say that the liberal people tended to be higher strung, pickier, less considerate of my time mm-hmm. than the Republicans. They didn't have a really grasp that I was actually a human being too. The only people that ever ripped me off were liberals, and I'm not going to say there's not a big enough study that I can say that. Mostly, I got along fine with both of them, but the few times that I really didn't do well tended to be kind of liberal people. You know how they are a little hyperactive about things.
Sure.
So,
going back to...
But I realized that the whole opinion that I had going into those experiences of Republicans, why I thought poorly of them, I got from movies, where they're the big guy with the cigar, or they're the general that comes in and wants to kill the alien. They're the bad people in all the movies. And I realized I'd been being indoctrinated without my own knowledge for decades already, long before Rush Limbaugh showed up to begin to level the playing field in terms of ideas.
I mean, no doubt there are bad people on either side of the spectrum, right?
Absolutely.
But one thing about, as I grew up in a conservative household, one thing that I was taught was that you treat people you treat people nicely, and you find out that they'll treat you nicely, and it didn't matter about their color. My dad, when I'm like 15 years old, I grew up in a small town Kentucky, predominantly white, mm-hmm. and most of us country. Most of the people, losing teeth at an early age.
Right.
And my dad came...
Kudos to you for learning to brush.
Thank you.
That's great.
My dad came to me and he said... I'm about that age where I'm starting to date or whatever, going to get a car soon, and he's like, son, you're gonna want to find a woman, and she's gonna be, you're gonna find the love of your life. But listen, I don't care if she's black, brown, white, yellow, she's short, she's tall, the biggest slut in Laurel County, he said. If you love her, we'll love her.
And you basically tried all of those different ones, didn't you? From what I hear.
From what you hear.
So this was your white Kentucky papa.
He's born in Cane Creek, Kentucky, right. Out in grew up in a burned out chicken coop, right?
Right.
As hillbilly as country, he's not a hillbilly, as country as it gets. And this is what he says to me when I'm 15 years old. But and I got fairly political at a young age. I was following politics and was into it, and I would see all these things of how, Republicans or conservatives were portrayed.
Right.
And then I was like, but my dad says this, and I don't know that there's a bigger conservative than my dad, right? And I'm like, but he says this. And then I'd be like watching TV, and I'd be like, wait a second, they're saying this, but again, my dad says this, or my uncle,
Right.
or
and every, almost always when you will talk to people who you're trying to come from a place of like you were saying, well, think about it this way. And oftentimes they'll say, well, my mother and father were, or sometimes you'll say something like, you probably just don't know any conservatives. Oh, I sure do. My mom and dad were both very strong conservatives. And then you say back to them, well, but were they racists? Were they horrible people? Were they warmongers? I mean, and obviously you like who you are, and they raised you according to their values. They didn't raise you according to some values that they thought you'd later adopt. So you have adopted values different from your conservative parents, but you are the result of the values from your conservative parents. So why do you think right across the board conservative values are somehow mean-spirited?
right. They got no answer.
And they just basically,
Yeah, but I said these three
and then
things.
you notice the text has turned black, meaning they've blocked you.
Yeah. Boy, that happens quite a bit now, doesn't it?
It happens to me all the time.
Right. They write something, you write something, and they kind of repeat themselves. You say, but what about this? And then, but what about this? And what? You know what? You can't write back to me anymore. I've made my statement.
Well, there's a couple of those types of arguments that just as for an illustration. One of them is that when I first really started getting in trouble and people started unfriending me, it was over the abortion issue.
Okay.
And my take was that at the time I was saying, look, I don't have any problem with third trimester abortions.
That was a senior moment. Dave meant to say first trimester abortions. Carry on.
We don't really know when life starts. It's probably somewhere around brain waves. I don't know. So I hadn't thought about it all that much. And my take on that was that I'm okay with abortion to that point. And people would say, yeah, we are too. So then I would say, so basically I'm pro-choice. And they go, yeah, we are too. And I said, but the pro-life people, they believe in their heart of hearts, to the deepest core of their being, that a million babies a year are being murdered. Mm-hmm. And for them to not try to get rid of abortion would be an immoral act. For them to do it is a moral act. Even though from your place, my liberal friend, of morality, you don't find that you are being immoral by being okay with abortion to the third trimester. They think you are because they believe that that's a human life.
Unfriend.
Right. And I had this conversation with a woman at the Kerrville Folk Festival in like 2008 when I was still very much a voting Democrat. And I said, so I mean so I go, do you accept that there's a morality there on the other side? She goes, look, there are no arguments. There are no arguments against abortion. And I go, did someone just tell me there are no arguments? And then later I heard that same phrase a bunch of times. There are no arguments. We've heard it a lot of times about the climate thing. There are no arguments.
Yeah.
That's what settled science means.
The science is settled.
It means
right?
there are no arguments.
Right.
So, I mean, you always bring arguments up, and people are not expecting to hear the arguments because, in fact, they've never heard any other arguments. They really actually believe there are no arguments.
That's interesting. I guess they do. I guess, well, if you grow up in a certain household and you grow up you go to a certain college and have certain professors and hang out with certain friends.
You've never heard the arguments.
You've never heard someone say from the other side, well, I look at it this way, And let's get back to the partisan issue for a second. I do an all right job of it, but in general, people on both sides could do a little better with saying, hey, I hear where you're coming from, but you're
really good at that.
But I see it this way. Yeah. And I don't even, we get people who start off with, you're the effing, devil, you're Satan, I hope you die of the worst, infection of your genitalia.
We get a lot of that right out of the gate.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hit them back with, well, what in the video didn't you agree with? Blah, blah, this, that, and the other. And then they come up with, well, I think this. And then we have a little bit of a discussion. And they end up sometimes, not always, but sometimes they'll go, hey, man, you were nice.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not trying to be nice. I'm trying to further the discussion.
Right.
And I realize that people are angry for so many reasons these days. And it had nothing to do with our video.
Right.
It had nothing to do with what I just wrote to him. People are angry because they got a job they don't like, maybe. They're having problems at home. They're having financial problems. The guy cut him off on the highway. The doctor just called and said that the veterinarian called and said his puppy's going to have to be put down. Like, there's so many reasons people are angry. And so I go, listen, I'm not going to be angry. So you could say, guys, you can say all you want to me. Call me whatever you want. You're not going to bring me down because...
No, I don't. I differ. Be only nice. Be nice to me. No, I support Jason's statement as regards Jason.
So Dave is saying, please insult Jason. No.
Yeah.
And that ain't what I'm saying. No one wants to be insulted. But when it comes down to it, I think what we can do as especially I feel like the conservative side is the adult side. What we can do is go, oh, well, I have some understanding on this issue. This lady has been indoctrinated about, let's say, abortion, like you said. And then I don't mind talking with her, and I can look past all the FUs and all the you're a racist, you're whatever. And I think it's important, and don't get me wrong, I'm not telling anybody to lay down here. Like, stand up for yourself, right? And there's people who I say, yeah, you know what, I'm not talking to him. I'll say, well, that's all, and I'm done. Because I'm not getting nowhere. All I'm getting is that kind of crap.
Yeah, to our listeners, I would say if you ever really want to see effective arguments taking place in the threads, I think I make good arguments in my videos, but I'm much less effective in the threads because I like to think I'm one of those people that's known to, the old saying is, does not suffer fools gladly. That was usually thought of as kind of that guy really knows his stuff. Now it's, I'm sort of just cranky and intolerant.
Cranky guy.
But I don't do as well. I'm trying, and I've had a few lately where I feel like I've used a little bit more your technique and drawn people in. But to talk about that as a general thing, I'd rather put the emphasis into putting really good arguments in the videos that I feel, because then if 100,000 people watch us, that'd be a pretty big video for us, but we have some of them. 20,000, 25, 30,000, 70,000. We got videos that are, have those views.
3,000, 4,000. We have those videos too.
Now we do with the new algorithms. Thanks, Facebook. I really always wanted to have a 200-person audience. I'm thinking if 25 people hear one of your videos or one of mine, and they get a couple of really good chunks of thinking, where they get, okay, that's a really good way of looking at that one thing, and that's an analogy that works, and it's an argument that understands their argument and comes back with something solid. To give that to our people by the thousands is to me more important than you walking one person for 3 hours of your time. You're walking this one person through it that started off calling you a douchebag. And I'm thinking, this is probably not the kind of person who's going to be, if they are changed at all by the idea, they're not going to spread that idea.
It's not an efficient use of my time,
that's
like, for sure.
You're like the farmer putting a finger down in one seed, and putting it back together. And I'm like the guy broadcasting lawn seeds, with, I want to get this done in large numbers.
Well, I like to think I'm also doing that.
You're doing that in your videos.
Right, I'm also doing that. But
then you'll get microscopic on the thread.
I will. I'll take my time with somebody sometimes when I have the time. Right. And it'd probably be better for me to be writing the next video in that, hour, 2 hours that I'm using there. And it's not 2 hours sitting there. Let's be honest. It's this here and then, because sometimes when things are going no,
because you're doing other things,
and when things are going crazy on Facebook,
it's just that you're terribly distracted with the other things you're doing that are supposed to be making you money.
Yeah.
No, I understand, but I think that, and I think that one of the reasons that you do that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're perfecting your own debate skills. And that's one of the cool things about putting a thing out. We'll put a thing out that we're standing up and giving our opinion on something. and then all the best arguments that people can muster come up to tell us that we're wrong. And over time, what that does is it teaches you to, in the writing process, to try to think of the arguments. But sometimes I can see that you're almost using that person as sort of, it's almost like you're doing Aikido or something like that, and this is just a person you're sparring with. What you're really working is on your own ability to take a challenge and not freak out.
Well, I think
so. You've probably become a better presenter of your ideas for times that it really will matter, like if you're being interviewed somewhere.
I think that's probably true. I don't look at it that way necessarily.
Oh, yes, you do.
But
User.
Yeah. It's very true that we get so many of the same arguments that you learn how to approach those.
I just want to
those
pull my
people.
hair out sometimes.
Right. But I don't know if I'm perfecting my argument or whatever, but I do write that way, like you say. When you're writing a piece, you write a statement and you read it and you go like, oh, okay, somebody's gonna say this. I'm gonna have to say no, but you're not looking at it right. Think about this. So then I'll delete that sentence and write it different. Like, okay, now they can't say that argument anymore. Now I've taken care of that argument, and I'll go through my whole piece.
Definitely, this process has taught me to do that a lot too.
Yeah, because you can anticipate more than I ever could now, and part of that is probably from arguing with people or debating people.
But I was more thinking about not so much that making the writing better or the presenting of your argument or your arguments better, but it's how to encounter other people's arguments in real time. Because here you are in real time, and here's somebody who's well presented and speaks well and writes a good sentence, and obviously has some pretty well entrenched stuff that they've gotten at a college level, and they're going to give you this stuff, and you're going to then say, and usually you draw them out because you're trying to get a little more information from them.
Sure. I like to ask a lot of questions.
Right.
I also think I'm learning a lot, right?
Right.
And it's not just the debate style or I'm learning about their point of view, right, and how they're seeing it. Because so many people, they write 5 sentences, and most of it's like, these people are stupid. I'm angry, blah blah blah. But then there's like the one point, and I say, well, are you saying this? Or are you seeing it from this angle? Is this the angle you're looking at it from?
Yeah. You've completely ignored all the insults, and you're actually it's a real kindness to look through that and take out the one thing. You honor them by saying, okay, somewhere in that mix of stuff, all that shit you were throwing at me, there was one gold nugget in there.
Right.
I'm gonna brush the shit off it myself and present it. Is this what you're trying to say?
Right. Because when you do that, then you can have a conversation, but also you get them to really think about the issue, because so many people, like you were saying earlier about yourself, or just so many people in general, have never thought.
Product placement.
Yeah, there you go. Have never thought about some of these issues. They've just taken what they've heard.
Right.
Back in the day they had that show Hannity and Combs, right?
Right.
And Combs was on the left, Hannity's on the right, and they're going at it. And then I would talk to kids at school. I was in high school, and there'd be we were a more conservative town, but there'd be somebody I'd be talking to about it. And I would hear their argument, and it would be Combs's argument.
It would be Combs's argument.
And I'd be like, oh, wow, he's just repeating what he just heard. And it was like pretty much verbatim. And I think they should.
And if you hear a good argument, you can't blame them.
That's right. But
it's a good argument.
But you should. I feel like you should have said, "Oh, well, I was watching, Combs talk about this, Alan Combs, and he says this, which I think is a good argument."
Right.
I saw the conservative millennial. I can't remember, Allison something. She made a good argument about something the other day. And I was telling somebody else about it, and I said, "Oh yeah, the conservative millennial. She said this," and I thought it was a great argument. But you get a lot of people who pretend like, I think they actually go and they look on some website and they take out a paragraph, or they take out something and they come back and they write it as if that was them thinking this. Right? Sometimes I've done that before, but I go, oh, well, according to, here's where I'm getting my information from, and I put it in quotes and everything. But we get people who pretend, and then you keep digging with them, and you realize they don't even understand the paragraph that they posted.
Well, let me ask you this then. What about your fans who hear one of yours, and then you've got to know that somewhere out there they're getting into a discussion somewhere, and they're going to come up with an idea they're not going to necessarily credit you with?
Sure.
Are you okay with that?
I don't take offense to it, but
it'd be better if they really understood the whole way you formed that idea.
My whole thing is the simple truth to me is what I'm trying to break down issues in a way and say them in a way that even somebody who agrees with me goes like, oh, okay, yeah, that's, because we've all done that. Like we've all heard of things, and then one day you go like, oh, I just understood that. I thought I understood that this whole time, but I just understood it.
I know. I have those moments all the time. I've heard that a million times. Oh, and now I get it.
That's right.
So what's wrong with me all those other times I heard
Like when I was working for at the studio, and my mentor, he would explain some things to me, and he would explain 1,000 things to me. It seemed like, and I'm just sitting there going like things are flying at me, and I'm going, okay, well I kind of got that. Oh, I got that, and then I'd be working on music and doing something, and then I'd do something, and I'd go like, oh, I just learned that. My mentor told me that 6 months ago,
right.
And I just got it.
And usually you'll find when you have those aha moments, you'll find that you're suddenly seeing the inner logic to a system.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that I was attracted to the idea of blue-collar logic, calling it that, is because I think that people who do task work that has to be done right for other people and for whom they are responsible, that to me is blue collar. They're not people that are doing some vague thing somewhere, moving numbers around, and who knows who did what, and it happened somewhere, in some investment firm or something.
Yeah.
If you are doing a specific thing for a specific customer, they expect it a certain way, and they're going to pay you an amount agreed for, you have to sooner or later get a grasp on the systems that'll get you through that thing in the way that'll get it done the best with the least number of mistakes, and so there's this sort of native sense that develops in people who do a lot of this kind of work.
Sure.
That isn't necessarily easy to explain.
Right,
You'll see guys doing their jobs, and they will have these little hacks and these little ways they do things that you go, what are you doing there? And they'll show you that, and you go, oh, this just changed the whole way I looked at this thing. And I do that same thing. I once had a woman who I was working for fold up my drop cloths. I'd left a few drop cloths out in the back, which I never do on a job, but I was leaving and I was tired, and I left, and I forgot that I had a couple of what we call runners. They're long pieces of canvas about 4 feet wide, and anywhere from 12 to 15 feet long, somewhere in that length. And they're the kind of thing you put along when you don't need a square space. You need a long space, like you're scraping windows or fascias or something. And she had folded these things in a very clever way. What she'd done is she'd grabbed it and she'd pulled it toward her and dropped it over, and so it was like this way. Instead of me like folding it end to end, I was folding it in a sense like my mother taught me to fold a blanket
like the sheets,
when I was 5 years old, and it made no sense for these things, and it made perfect sense what she had done, and I thought, oh, why didn't I get that?
Right.
And so that I never once folded one of those things in another way other than she taught me just by her doing it that way.
Yeah.
And I've seen people do that, all kinds of things where you just pick up things. I think I've taken us a little off of our track here, but so let's not end on that because it makes me sound stupid.
Well, should I say something stupid now and then we can end it?
Yeah, I guess what we in summation, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to a place where we are able to have arguments that don't necessarily cause the other side to scream at us.
That's right.
And when they do scream at us, that we can then take these their arguments, understand them better, and make some sense out of that,
and not take it personal,
and expect it and be ready for it, and because really we're not looking at a whole bunch of horrible people who feel differently from us, just like they're not looking at a bunch of horrible people on our side who feel differently. What we're looking at is a lot of people who've just accepted a whole bunch of ideas verbatim without thinking them through very much, and it's threatening for somebody to ask you to change your mind about something, particularly when your social group is at stake.
Well, I feel like what you're saying, I think most of us are kind of in the middle, right? Where most of us want to be friendly with each other. Most of us want to have regular conversations. But what ends up happening is the political and the ruling class end up basically pushing us into fights, and we end up fighting the fight that they want us to fight, as opposed to having a discussion about why I think differently. And a good friend of mine, I don't want to get into abortion right now, but you
don't want to get an abortion or get into abortion?
Either.
Because it's a whole different thing.
Either.
Okay.
But his point was he was a progressive, and he was like, well, and kind of like you, he's like, I do kind of see that there has to be a point where it's a life or it's not a life. Right. When is that? And then, boy, the people come out crazy, and I don't want our side to be, when someone says, well, I think this, for us to come out crazy and be like, well, come on, you must be the worst person in the history of the world. And I get it all the time. I get called ugly and all that nasty stuff. But you know what? They're angry. Let them be angry, and let's hit them with good arguments, good knowledge.
Right.
And then let's battle for what we think is the right way, the right thing, and let the insults just slide off our backs. And
well, that is one of the key bits of wisdom, and one that I struggle with, because I come from a long line of fairly well drunken Celts. Where before you do anything much, you drink a whole bunch of pints of ale, and
then you're just angry,
and somebody's gonna have to get knocked, over most nights, whether it's you or somebody else. I don't have a real anger issue, but I'm warlike.
You don't suffer fools.
I'm warlike when it comes to that. Yeah, I mean, even when I have a sense that we're kind of getting to the end of our conversation.
Yeah, it's run its course.
And there was another idea I wanted to bring up, but we'll do it at another time.
Right. This could go on forever. I mean, that's the truth. And this is kind of why we started doing this, started filming these, is because we would get together to work on a video, or 2 videos or 3 videos, whatever it be. And then before you know it, 3 hours later, we're like, well, are we going to do some videos or what? We've been talking about what's going on for so long. And so
now when we come in, we don't look at each other. We don't talk.
That's right.
Jason started bringing up something a little while ago.
He's like,
before we said that, I was like, that, that's for online, for the on the air.
For the conversation.
It's for the conversation. And really, hey, that's for the conversation, right?
Thanks, brother.
All right, talk to you later. Talk to you guys later. I'll talk to him in just seconds.